evening. This is Wednesday night and it's Map Show, and I'm excited to be with you as always on a Wednesday night. And can you believe it? We are on show 132. That's almost 132 weeks that we have been running the Map Show. And I think for those of you who can do your mathematics, we're actually getting close to the equivalent of 3 years. I mean, imagine 3 years of doing this show. And I think each time we are having more exciting, vibrant discussions, and we're looking forward to having your comments coming through this evening. So for those of you who are joining us via live streaming, or if you're watching this recording at a later time, please share your comments. And as they usually say, like and share with your friends, share the link with others. I think this is a really important aspect of just getting a message of purpose out there. And tonight I have a very exciting story that I would like to share with you. And this particular story goes back to the start of Map for Life. I don't know if you've ever felt at any stage in your life that you lacked credibility. I remember when I had this idea of putting together a tool that would help me to move from where I was to where I wanted to be. I was excited. I was passionate. I was energized. I mean, I went literally straight from my office to the spare room in my home, and I began to feverishly work on this new idea. I mean, I was consumed by it for 3 days, 18 hours a day. I was busy typing away, designing forms, getting all excited about this tool, because I realized that not only was I a person in need of direction and clarity of purpose, but other people out there also needed the same opportunity. So I worked very hard, and on the Sunday, because this was Friday morning that I started, 9 a.m., the 19th of March, 1999. I mean, all of these nines in a row. And by Sunday evening, 10 p.m., I started feeling a little bit of a runny nose, I suppose one would say. And right on cue, Monday morning, I felt very sorry for myself. You know what men are like. Women tend to take these things in their stride, but men, at the slightest sign of anything that might be out of the ordinary, they have to go to bed and sleep. So Monday, I was sick in bed, and I took all of the work that I'd done that weekend and put it into a filing cabinet where it stayed and remained for 6 months. But when I took it out again to restart in September 1999, it was about the middle of September that I restarted on the work, I suddenly realized here I was with just 3.5 months left to the start of the new millennium. I mean, this was the year 2000. Everyone else was talking about a bug. I was talking about a virus that was going to be taking on the new millennium, and this virus was going to be the Map for Life material. People were going to be taking this and transforming their lives. I was re-energized again. But I just felt that I lacked the credibility. Who's going to buy a book from an unknown individual? Not just an unknown individual, but an unknown individual who grew up on a farm in one of the poorest provinces of the country. I mean, who's going to pick up a book from this individual? So I quickly made a list of 20 people that I believed had credibility. You may have heard of some of these names: Nelson Mandela, Richard Branson, Christopher Kopke, who was the head of Daimler Chrysler in South Africa, which had its office in East London. I mean, I wasn't afraid. Dr. Miles Monroe was on my list. And so I had 20 people that I sent this to, hoping that I would get at least 10 responses. And the idea was that I would include their points on success in this manual. And by doing so, other people would see that this manual had credibility. And yes, maybe that was the wrong thing to do, but it gave me the what I needed to be able to continue and to finish this work. And so after I'd sent out these letters to the different people requesting the information, slowly the responses came back. And Richard Branson said, "You've got a fantastically exciting project ahead of you. I wish you all the best of luck." And that was his contribution. Nelson Mandela responded with a similar sort of response. Interestingly, he gave a copy of the manuscript which I'd sent him to his secretary, and she contacted me in 2007 wanting to buy the books for a bookstore that she had just started, inspired by the very book that Nelson Mandela had given her. So, there's lots of stories that come out of it. 9 people didn't submit a response. 11 people did. Miles Monroe provided the foreword, and 10 others gave content. And one of those people was arguably the busiest person on my list, and that was Mr. Raymond Ackerman. The reason I'm talking about this particular individual this evening is because many people in South Africa would have known that he passed away recently at the age of 92. I met Raymond Ackerman. He was 68 and still incredibly engaged in the head office of Cape Town, the head office of Pick n Pay in Claremont in Cape Town. And I remember the meeting so well. But the meeting only took place in April 2000, but I received his response to my request for 10 points on how to build a successful business. I received that in the beginning of October 1999. And this is how it happened. Sometimes we talk about coincidences in life. And what was interesting is I lived in a small suburb in called Beacon Bay in East London, and there was a new shopping development that was being built. And in this, being an engineer myself, I'm always interested in construction, and so I would regularly visit this construction site just to see how things were progressing. And during these visits, I happened to meet the future manager of what was going to be a Pick n Pay store. His name was Wayne. And Wayne and I would regularly chat as I came to visit the site. I built a relationship with him, and we talked. And this was long before I had started putting Map for Life together. But when I put the list of 20 people, and Mr. Ackerman was on that list, I had difficulty getting hold of Mr. Ackerman. Everyone else on the list I was able to connect with, but Mr. Ackerman, it was impossible. I phoned different stores, I phoned head offices, I phoned all over, and I just couldn't get through to Mr. Ackerman. Everybody had a reason why they wouldn't give me his contact number. And then one day, I learned that his personal assistant had the surname of, or the same surname as Tom Hanks. So I won't tell you what her surname was, but June was his personal assistant. And as soon as I had that name, then I stopped trying to get hold of Mr. Ackerman. My mission was now to get hold of June Hanks. And of course, that was a lot easier. I managed to make contact with her and told her that I wanted to ask Mr. Ackerman to contribute to Map for Life. And she said, well, you know something? He's going to be in East London this week on Thursday. Why don't you go to the official opening of the Pick n Pay and give him your copy, or meet with him and ask? And I thought, the chances of this actually happening are so slim. But Wayne was there. I knew Wayne. So I went Thursday morning. to Wayne, and instead of trying to organize an invite to this special evening celebration or the official opening of the store, I said to Wayne, Wayne, I've got a package here. Now, June hadn't told me this. So I told a little bit of a white lie, as they say. I said, Wayne, June Hanks has asked me to give you this parcel. Mr. A, as he was affectionately known, has to have this document on the plane with him tonight. It is critical. And so, of course, I left it in the capable hands of Wayne, and I left. The next morning, at approximately 9:30 a.m., my fax machine. Now, if you don't know what a fax machine is, ask your mother or father or grandfather or grandmother. They'll tell you what a fax machine is. My fax machine began to operate, and out came Mr. Ackerman's contribution. I was amazed. The busiest person had literally written his response on the plane home that evening. And interestingly, one of the 10 points that he shares in his contribution of making or building a successful business was this point. It was answer everything on the day that you receive it. Now, I understood, he had put things in place to prevent a lot of stuff coming to him. But because he received that in his hand, he literally opened it on the plane, completed his response, and it was sent through to me the very next morning. And that to me was just one of those wow moments. I couldn't believe it. Sadly, my fax machine was using heat-sensitive paper. So the original fax very soon faded away. So there's no trace of the original fax, but the content of what he gave me was in the Map for Life book. And at that stage, we called it My History in the Making. And inside here is Raymond Ackerman's contribution. So I want to just show you very quickly. I called it, interestingly, Wisdom in Action. Okay, and so for those of you who are familiar with Map for Life, you might now begin to realize how the gems began. They started with these things, and right there is Raymond Ackerman's contribution, and expanded on in the other pages. It was in April of the next year that I managed to visit Cape Town, and I presented Mr. Ackerman with a framed copy of the cover of this book with a small or short little thank you message below. And I want to just relay to you what happened in that meeting. Here I was at the age of 33. Yes, I was that young. I was saying to somebody the other day, that's me back in 1999. Okay, so I did have hair back then, and I was actually I was excited, but I was also nervous. I had been driving around the block trying to find a way to get into this building, so I was almost late for my meeting. I'd come directly from the airport. In a strange city. There wasn't GPS in those days. I was using a map, and I had to try and find my way through one-way streets to get to this office. I finally arrived there, and he was ready, waiting to greet me. And no sooner had we arrived that his wife popped her head through the office door and offered me a cup of tea. And suddenly I realized that here Raymond Ackerman and his wife worked in offices that were next to each other. And it was just so wonderful to see. And he asked me a bit about the book. We had a photograph taken with me presenting him with this certificate. And he highlighted one point specifically, and I just want to put it on the screen, and we'll continue with the other points in a moment. But he said, if you want to be successful in any venture, you have to find that one thing that you can invest your life in. Now, I remember my father, whenever it came to Christmas time, and my mother would get us to write a list of things that we wanted for Christmas. I don't know if Henny and Glenn had to do this when they were younger. Maybe they can tell us a bit later. But I remember still sometime when I was younger, I had to draw pictures because I hadn't learned how to write yet. I would draw pictures of what my gift would be. And then I'd have to explain to my mother what this picture was because she couldn't understand the picture. And my dad, she would take this list to my dad, and I would hear him bellow out from the bedroom or somewhere. He said, "What? Do you think I'm Rockefeller?" So evidently, Rockefeller made a bit of money in his lifetime. And he used to say singleness of purpose was the chief requirement for success, no matter what your aim was in life. And here, Raymond Ackerman was repeating, in essence, the same thing. And at that time in my life, at the age of 33, I was focused on a pin cushion. I had so many ideas so many irons in the fire, so many things that I was going to do. And he just looked at me. I'd already read his contribution 3 months earlier or 4 months earlier. But when he looked at me that morning, it was almost like he looked right into my soul. And he said, "You have to find that one thing that you're willing to invest your entire life in if you want to build something that's going to have a meaningful impact." And when he said that, I realized there were many good ideas that I had that I needed to say no to. And then a statement by Zig Ziglar began to resonate in my mind or in my head. And it said this: if you want to have the best that life has to offer, you have to say no to the rest. And there in his office, and Raymond Ackerman, I'm not a tall person, but Raymond Ackerman was considerably shorter than me. So Henny, if you met Raymond Ackerman, you'd have to look hard to find him because he was a short man. And so I realized that your stature does not define whether you can be successful or not. What really matters is your commitment to that single vision. And then he asked me a very interesting question. He said, looking again deep into my eyes, he said, "Is your wife with you on this?" And in that moment, I hesitated. And the reason I hesitated, because up until that point, this was my idea. I was running ahead with making this thing happen, getting it published, getting it into the bookstores. I hadn't actually stopped to ask Anne. She was encouraging me for sure, but I hadn't actually stopped to ask. And he said, because if you want to succeed at this one thing, and you want to have a story to tell, and you want to inspire other people, then you need to do it together. You need to be in it together. And those two aspects of the 10 points, in fact, it's just the first point of the 10, really got me to think deeply about what I was engaging in. And I made a commitment that this which I had started would be my life's work. And so I just want to encourage you this evening that Map for Life as a tool, not only will it help you to move from where you are to where you want to be, but it will help you get that focus. And Romeo from Canada, formerly Cameroon, taught me that focus simply means to follow one course until success. Follow one course until success. And that resonates with what Mr. A had said that time when I met with him. And sadly, he has passed on. But you know something? I am certain that he has touched many lives. What was interesting is later he published a few books of his own. And the books that he published were taking one or two of these concepts of the 10 things that you need to do to be successful, which we'll continue next week, Wednesday. But one of the books that he wrote was Focus on a Pinhead. Another one was Let the Grasshoppers Jump In. And so I'm sure that many people's lives have been touched through the life of Raymond Ackerman. And I just want to thank him for inspiring me, just little me at the age of 33, starting out something new. He looked into my soul and saw something and felt that he needed to just sow a seed of commitment right there. And he supported me. I trained a number of his managers right there in Cape Town. And through that beginning, Map for Life is still here today and will continue way beyond my life. So thank you so much for listening to this short message. Henny and Glenn will be joining me shortly after a break. And we would love to hear where you're from and also any questions or comments that you have, because that's going to help and lead our discussion. So we're just going to take a short little break, and Henny will be back to lead us in discussion. See you shortly.
Okay, I was muted. Good evening, everyone. From my side, welcome to the Wednesday. Glenn, thank you very much for a very inspirational talk. I think it's about the third or the fourth time that I've heard it, and every time it just inspires me once again as if it was the first time. In terms of our online audience, Passmore from Zambia, welcome. Quickly going down, Simbo from Tanzania, welcome. Quentin from Cape Town, and Gustav from Pretoria, welcome. I think I will be joined by Glenn and by Glenn on the panel, so we can have a conversation about what Glenn has dealt with us just now. Very interesting. So yeah, let me get them on the screen with me.
Hello, Henny.
Great stuff. Welcome, Glenn. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I think what I want to do is I want to quickly start with a story. It's very interesting. My oldest son is studying in Potch at Northwest University, and I see him about once a month. He comes home about once a month right now, and he was due to come home, I think, on a Thursday, and he said to me, "No, I'll be late. I'll only be coming through on the Friday because Raymond Ackerman's son is coming to talk to all of us around a topic called entrepreneurship." And I think his son's name is Andrew. I don't want to lie, but very interestingly enough, he dealt with me over the weekend. He discussed everything, and he said what was very interesting. His son said that Raymond used to work for a company called Checkers, and he saw a few things not working the way that it should be working, and Raymond went and said, "Can we not change a few things?" And they said no. And then Raymond Ackerman said there must be a better way of doing things, and he started Pick n Pay. So he was challenged in the way that he wanted to do things, and he actually, I think, at that point made quite a big dent into the business of Checkers. But he believed that what he needed to do was focus on a pin, just like Glenn mentioned right now. And I think he's left an unbelievably deep footprint in South Africa with what he's done.
Absolutely.
Henny, just a quick comment, because I asked Raymond Ackerman what his story was when I met him in Cape Town, and you're quite right. He did work for a company that's currently sponsoring the Rugby World Cup, and they actually sent him over to America to go and do some study there, and he saw something that excited him. And when he returned, he was 32 years of age, by the way. He was 32. He came back and he said, "Hey," because up until that point, the way you did shopping was you would walk up to a counter and you would ask the person behind the counter to go and fetch the items for you. And he had this radical idea when he came back, and that was to allow the customer to go and pick up their own items. So, to pick and then pay, which is a completely different to the way things had been done before. And it was so radical that they chose to fire him and not bring in these new ideas. And fortunately, he found a few investors who gave him the money to start up his first store and allow him to make all the decisions, despite being not being the person with the finance. And that's how Pick n Pay began, which grew into many other chains as well. I'm not even sure, but I know when I was in his office, I saw things like, I think it was called Value Mart or something like that. I think there was something like Stutterfits, or there were a number of different stores that I didn't even realize were part of the Pick n Pay group. So that was quite an interesting thing to see at the head office. 32 years of age, he changed things, and yeah.
And like you always teach us, don't be successful, be significant. I think Raymond Ackerman has left quite a legacy behind for us.
Absolutely.
All righty. Tlali from Masira has also joined us. Welcome aboard, Tlali. Glenn Lees, I'm going to go to you right now. What stood out for you from what Glenn shared with us?
Okay. I've said this often before, and when I talk about Glenn McQuirk, and that is the words that he mentioned: singleness of purpose. He spoke about others having the singleness of purpose, but I must admit, and kudos to you, Glenn, because I've known you now since 2013, and I have to admit, you're probably the only man that I know of that has such incredible singleness of purpose in terms of Map for Life. It is astounding. It really is. So often I see people, they go into a particular business and then they get sidetracked, and then they go into something else and they get sidetracked, and so it continues. And eventually, by the time they reach the age of 50, then they finally decide, maybe I should go down this path. And I'm guilty myself in terms of things like that. And so I really have respect for you. It's been fascinating for me to watch you. And irrespective of things that take place through COVID, you name it, singleness of purpose, man, go for it and keep up the good work. It's been fascinating for me.
Thanks for saying that, Glenn. I think just as you were talking about that, I think one of the big distractions in the world in which we operate and the systems that we are being taught from a young age is that profit is the priority. In fact, at school, nobody teaches us about purpose. That's a foreign concept, and there's a lot to do with money and profit.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're chasing money, you're chasing profit, it's maybe more difficult to have singleness of purpose, because there's always a better, easier way to do something. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, you and I are designed for a particular purpose, and it's who we are, and you can't change from that. once you know what your purpose is, then it's something that's it's your life. It's not something that you've chosen. It's chosen you to some extent. Although that's not true, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
So
It's almost a lifestyle.
Yeah, so I think when you connect with purpose, then you are equipped to go through pain that people who are pursuing profit cannot.
Yeah.
So if somebody's doing something simply to see the return on investment, at some stage, the pain becomes too much and they quit. But when you linked with purpose, the pain can never be. And I think, there's a few people that have been, there's a quote, well, in my hometown of East London, where I grew up, there's a statue erected to a guy by the name of Steve Biko. And apparently he said that he'd rather die for an idea that would live than to live for an idea that would die, something to that effect.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe he was touching on something relating to purpose, although his mission was very different. But yeah, sorry, let me stop there because I can see Henny's wanting to ask questions and is.
Yeah. Passmore has shown us that he's not a man with lots of patience. Passmore is saying, I'd like to hear the 10 points. We'll get to that, Passmore. I'll make some time for us to get to those 10 points tonight. What you said right now, Glenn, was very interesting for me. As we discussed last week, Thursday wasn't one of the greatest weeks that I had, and I sort of almost fell all over the place. And the focus this week was really to just get back to where I needed to be, to make sure that the vision board starts talking to me again, etc., etc. And it feels like once you start focusing and zooming in on that pinhead, everything just starts to almost join the party. Everything starts to fall in place. I had a conversation with Peter Darrell on Friday, and one of the things that he suggested I maybe do is to start a weekly blog where I share with people what's happening, and I'm learning lots of things during the week, and I'm reading things, and I said to myself, well, let's start that. Let's share something every week with somebody that I've learned. I will grow in the process. And the amazing thing is, as soon as you start doing that, as soon as you start focusing on your purpose and you go and put it down, it's unbelievable how many opportunities you start seeing again. I mean, we've spoken about it so many times, but if you zone in what you're supposed to do, you just start seeing things that's always been there, but it all of a sudden just starts making a lot more sense. Things are there. Things are just happening. You're looking for opportunities, and they're around every corner. Whereas if you're not focused, you don't go to see those things. Glenn, let me call them Glenn L and Glenn M. All right, Glenn L, your take on that?
Henny, you are so right. And I've seen that literally in the past couple of months for myself as well, where I started really focusing because I do freelance sales for Impact Radio as well. And well, let me take you back about a year back. I changed focus slightly just in terms of the freelance sales for Impact Radio to something slightly off track from that. And I lost complete focus in terms of sales. My sales dropped off substantially. And as far as Map for Life is concerned, I was just plodding along. But I made a decision probably about 2 months ago to really start changing my focus back to that and start dropping off all the pincushion issues and focus on the pinhead. In fact, I actually started talking about that very same thing. I was actually using that language. And that's exactly what took place. I suddenly got people contacting me and asking me to do coaching, asking me to help them with the Map for Life books. It was fascinating to me that just because I changed my focus, immediately doors started opening, opportunities started opening up. And it's been quite a fascinating journey. Just in the past month of October, I was actually asked to come on board something called High Coaches on LinkedIn. And I hadn't really focused on LinkedIn much at all. I think I'd done 5 posts in total. And I actually did 31 posts in 1 month. And I got an incredible amount of followers. I got an amazing amount of impressions. And from that, I've generated further business. And simply all I did was I focused on the Map for Life concepts and applied those principles to all the talks and posts that I did. And it's just been an amazing journey. So it really does work. Absolutely.
Glenn M., your take on that?
Look, I was just sharing yesterday about my nickname that I was given when I was a youngster. And when I say a youngster, before I started school, my father gave me a name, and my name was Tanglefoot. And the reason my name was Tanglefoot was because my feet got tangled up on rocks and all kinds of things. So I don't think I ever had a foot that didn't have a plaster on, because I'd kicked my toe against a rock somewhere during the day, during the week. And so this continued. And it was only when I started school that my teacher, my grade 1 teacher, asked my parents, has your son's eyes been tested? And they said no. And so, of course, I went to have my eyes tested, and they discovered that I was almost blind. Well, I wasn't blind. I was farsighted. In fact, I'm so farsighted I can see the future. So it was a gift which we didn't know of at that stage. But what it does highlight when I look back is the importance of focus. Because what happened was, as soon as I put these spectacles on, I was able to put things into focus. And as a result, it not only helped me see the path that I should follow, but it also helped me to avoid the rocks. And, instead of kicking my toes against the rocks, I stepped on them or stepped over them. And so focus it plays a very important role in so many things, in particular vision, because without focus, you cannot have vision. So our physical vision is dependent on focus. And so our spiritual or our mental vision, our ability to see the future as if it was real, that also requires a special kind of focus. So absolutely, focus is a very key thing.
Quentin has posted something very deep for us as well. I'm embarrassed just thinking about how many ideas I flirted with and never really yielded to purpose. Ouch. So it's never too late, Quentin. It's never too late. I read a quote this morning from Albert Einstein that said, imagination is more important than knowledge. I think imagination is where it all starts. I think you have to have imagination to dream big, and to really dream that big that it almost seems impossible to get there, and not worry about anything else. But then once you've got that dream written down, and writing things down is very important. Once you've got it written down, I think that's when the focus starts. That's when you start the journey, and each and every little thing that you do needs to take you one step closer to where you need to be. What are the magical things that we can do to make sure that we get to our dreams? Glenn L?
I really think that there's several things, and you've mentioned a couple of them as you've spoken about now and asked the question. And I think the first thing is just that everything starts with a thought, and that thought then leads to vision, and then vision leads to the focus. But then from that point, again, Glenn McCurk often mentions this. He says, "Don't just think it, ink it," and we've got to then write it down, which is exactly what you spoke about. I think so often people walk around with ideas in their head and they don't do anything about it. And the late Miles Monroe always used to say, "Go to the grave empty." The graveyard is probably the richest place on earth because of all the ideas and concepts and visions that have gone to the grave because they haven't fulfilled it. And so that's such an important aspect. I think, I'm actually just thinking of a particular chap, and I can't remember the guy's name, who had a vision in his economics class. And he wrote a paper on this particular vision that he had, and he handed it in to the professor. And the professor marked it and gave it back to him, put a C on it. And he wrote there, "Don't dream of things that cannot happen." And this man then stepped out of college and became the owner of Federal Express, because he said that his vision was to have overnight mail. And so, that proves that it's such an important aspect to take that dream and vision and idea, keep the focus, write down the goals, and step in it and move. And I think one other aspect that's also quite important, and I was just chatting to some people today about it, be careful who you talk to as far as the dream and vision is concerned, because there are naysayers out there, and they will put you down and they will say, bad idea, you're not going to make it, it's a major risk, you're too much of a risk, you can't do it, you're going to waste money, and you need to cut that off. Okay, focus. Comes back to that focus. Take the vision, write it down, step into it, and trust that it's gonna happen.
Glenn, I've got a different question for you. You mentioned the two things in the talk. One of them was,
his answers are ready for you. Go ahead.
I know that's what I saw. People are supposed to listen to what we're saying and not prepare their questions. That's what I've been told as well. So let me throw you a different question. You mentioned the pinhead focus, but the second thing you focused that I think a lot of people miss is get your partner to be part of it. And I mean, Anne has been part of your journey for 24 years already. Can you maybe share with us some of the gold nuggets that came from her joining you on this journey?
Well, I think we are two different characters. When I say two different characters, I always say that we love to have coffee together. That was one of the things that we did from a very early stage. Both of us were fortunate. I only worked for a boss for 5 years. So after 5 years of working as an engineer, I said, hang on, there's got to be more to life than this. And so I started my own consulting business. And Anne, she studied nursing. She was running the intensive care unit in a private hospital in East London. And she too, after just a few years of working there, she left to start her own business. So we had the freedom to meet together when we chose. And I think that's something that is just missing in today's life. Everyone's so busy working for someone else that their relationship is taking strain. And so we used to regularly meet at the Wimpy. For those of you who know the Wimpy brand in South Africa, we used to have a cup of coffee together. And I used to love these coffee sessions because I got to talk, which is what I enjoyed doing, and Anne got to listen, which she was good at. So, well, it wasn't entirely like that. She would listen, and then she would just say one thing, one word or whatever, and that would be able to swing that compass or that ship or the rudder. And so she's been an incredibly valuable, not only sounding board and encourager, but the reality is that if it wasn't for her, Map for Life wouldn't exist. And I say that because in 1996, when I began to ask with all seriousness the big purpose question, why am I here? 3 people appeared on the scene in East London. 3 people from America came to East London. I mean, East London is the forgotten city in South Africa. If I tell anyone I'm from East London, the next time I meet them, they will give me some other city name. East London is the forgotten city, and here we had these 3 Americans come and did a whole week on purpose and potential, and I was too dumb at that moment to understand that they were there talking to me. I took a lot of notes. I bought all the videos. But then after that, Anne asked me to put together a tool to help her assist a friend to lose weight. And so I put together a 5-page tool, which today we would call the launch pad. I put that together and gave it to Anne, and she used it successfully with a friend of hers. It was only 3 years later that I put Map for Life together, and only 10 years after that I remembered that Anne was the one who actually asked the question and made and got me to make the first tool, which one day would become Map for Life. So I can say that besides being an encourager and the initiator, an inspiration. Well, there's so many things. I think there's times when you can, maybe we're talking about focus here. There's times when you can become clouded, get involved in too many things. And she's been able just to remind me of where north is, and that's been extremely valuable. So to get to work together, what's really important is to find what interests both of you in something. And so we literally, it was only after we both went through the Map for Life process ourselves independently that we realized that I thought I knew what Anne wanted, and she thought she knew what I wanted. And those two pictures were very different. We also thought that our dreams were different. She was talking about one thing and using certain terminology, and I was talking about something else and using my terminology. But after we started looking at it closely, we found that actually we were both talking about the same future. We were just describing it differently. And once we saw that common ground and began to focus on that, things changed. And so I would encourage every couple out there, work through this thing together. The world wants you to be separated and each do your own thing, but there is common ground to be found. And when you find that, I always say that people who dream together stick together. So dreaming together and sharing the same common thing is very important.
Thank you very much. I see Paul Smith has joined us, and he says, focus is a mandate for advancement. And I think it's a quote from Jesse Duplantis. So welcome aboard, Paul. Glenn, so we're speaking about focus, and we've spoken about focus a lot. I think the buzzwords out there right now, I think in the business space, is really all about leadership. Everybody is talking about leadership and leadership with intent and this type of leadership and that type of leadership. Do you think there's a correlation between leadership and focus?
Sure. Henny, the answer is an emphatic yes. I can actually stop there. If I had to continue, we'll be here the whole night. But the bottom line is absolutely yes, very much so. I think one of the challenges that most people have in leadership positions is that they're tied up with too many things. And again, it comes down to that focus and that concept of pinhead versus pincushion focus. I think generally speaking, and I am speaking generally, most young people coming into leadership roles tend to want to do everything. And they think that they're the best at everything. And that's not necessarily the case. And you don't have to be the best at everything. So the focus is such an important aspect. I'm going to stop there, because if I get going now, then I'm really going to take the rest of the evening. But yeah, quite correct. Absolutely.
Henny, if I can just say something on that. I mean, I'm reminded all the time when I take these off, I can lead no one. I can lead no one.
Yeah,
everything's a blur. And the one thing necessary for a leader, the only thing that a leader needs, is the ability to see where he's going and point other people in that direction. I think there's many books written on leadership, and so many courses that one can do on leadership. But ultimately, it just boils down to that one thing. You must be able to see where you're going and point other people in the right direction. And if you can do that well, you can lead. Because people tend to follow the person with the torch. If you're in a dark place, whoever's got the torch, that's the leader. Titles mean nothing. Have you got the torch? Can you see where you're going? I'm following you.
Perfect. Before I get to your question, I see we've got a nice online community tonight. Jane is also online, and Jane says, common ground, focus, avoid naysayers, implement one day at a time. I think that's the magical thing is really baby steps. Focus is not making leaps. Focus is really taking baby steps to get to the bigger picture. Glenn, to you now, Glenn M. Without focus, you can be successful, but with focus, you will be significant. Is that fair to say? Can you be successful without focus? I know you can't be significant without focus.
I don't think you can succeed at anything without focus. No, I don't think anybody succeeds at something without looking clearly at what they're doing. I'm just thinking of, hitting a nail with a hammer, and trying to do that without focus. I did try. I really did when I was younger, and I pretty soon learned that my fingers were valuable, and I needed them to hold the nail. And if I didn't really focus on that nail head, my fingers were the next thing the hammer was going to hit. So I think even in the simple tasks, I was at church on Sunday morning, and someone distracted me while I was about to put the sugar in the coffee, and in the process, I was unsuccessful to some degree. So focus plays a really it's a key thing, and I think it's not about. I think the success versus significance is based on what you focus on. And we talk about in Map for Life, are you planning the wedding or are you planning the marriage? Both of them require focus, but the one is to impress other people and it's success oriented. The other one is to maybe think generational and to create some form of stability and long-term impact, which is the marriage. And so I think in both cases, focus is necessary. It's about what are we focused on? Are we focused on self-edification and glorification? Am I there with the numbers? I've achieved these numbers. I've earned this amount of money. I've got this title. Is that our mission, or is it something different? And so I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. I'm just looking at the time right now. Pastor, I did make a promise. So before I ask Glenn to give us a sneak preview of what's going to be happening over the next few weeks, and while I give Glenn L the chance to just come up with what is your magical advice for people on how to focus, I'm going to ask the audience as well if there's any closing thoughts from your side. Won't you just post that as well so we can run through that? Over to you, Glenn M. Sneak preview, please.
Okay, so just very quickly, I'll pop them up on the screen and we'll talk about them in the weeks ahead. So the first one we talked about tonight was focus on a pinhead, and so that you'll see on the screen there. The next one is consumer sovereignty, which basically says customer is king and make them feel that way, and we'll talk about that. Let the grasshoppers jump in. Everybody can make a contribution irrespective of their title or position is really what that's about. The 7 friends, okay, it's a little bit small there. We'll break these down into 7 steps. So that's a session on its own, which Raymond Ackerman used as the basis for any business or idea that he had. He would go through these 7 friends, and we'll talk about that. And what interestingly he said is that success in business is 90% guts 10% cash, but 90% guts. And most people don't want to start business because they're talking about the lack of cash, when actual, if you had the guts, you would borrow the cash. And that's his sort of line there. And then the next one was that no one went broke on having too much cash. And I think I've used the excuse on many occasions, cash flow. So he brings that home. He also talks about social responsibility, and that in a business environment, you impact the community, make sure that you really take an interest in that community, understand the community, and invest in the community, because after all, your business wouldn't exist without the community. The other thing that he talked about was the concept that you don't have to mark up everything by the same percentage. You can actually have something that you're selling at a loss to attract customers to your store and sell other things at a profit. Too many businesses today put the same markup on everything. I mentioned that one of the things that I experienced that he did was to answer all messages that got to his desk the day that he got them, so he could sleep well at night. And the last thing was to, if a customer has, I don't know, there, without question, if somebody returns something, even if it wasn't purchased in his store, he would refund or replace it without question. And so those are just some of his points. We'll dive a little bit deeper into these in our next sessions. Especially for Passmore.
Especially for Passmore, yes.
Passmore is going to tune in from Zambia next time.
All right, perfect. Glenn L. So I am joining one of your coaching sessions, and the biggest concern that I've got right now is I'm struggling to focus. What would be the advice that you would give me?
Okay. For me, the first thing that I would start asking you is, what is your vision? What is your vision for the future? And have you written that down? And have you got a vision board in terms of that vision? I think that is such an important aspect, because it needs to be absolutely clear to you in terms of the direction that you're going into. If you don't have that, and you don't have a vision for the future and know where you're going in the first place, how are you going to get there? That's it.
It's straightforward and simple. So if there's nothing to focus on, if there isn't something that I can focus on, how can I focus?
Exactly.
It makes sense. That makes sense. So for me to focus, I need to know where I'm going. A lot of us, and I mean, I saw the 90% guts, and I'm already interested in that, because that to me sounds like something that makes sense to me. And another quote that I saw this week, for me, that almost touches on focus a little bit differently, was by Robin Sharma. It says, if you could erase all of the mistakes of your past, you would also erase all of the wisdom of your present. Remember this lesson, and remember the lesson, but not the disappointment. I think focus doesn't take away from us any mistakes. Focus is not going to be a guarantee that we will not make mistakes, but focus will allow us to learn from it, to become stronger, and to get closer to where we need to go. It is going to be a journey, and focus is just that. I have to keep on going. For the runners out there, you need somebody to just keep you honest. If I don't feel like running in the morning, my partner's outside, I have to go and run. And I think what I took from the session tonight, Glenn, is that's where your partner comes in as well. Sometimes you might feel that you can't go. You need the running partner. Anne is your running partner, and I think it makes life a lot easier if you've got that running partner on your side. All righty. Before we close, then, just quickly looking at it, Passmore says, thank you, Glenn. And for the panelists, thank you very much. All right. One last thought from you, Glenn. Al?
Okay. Just don't give up. Just keep on going. And that's that guts. I think, and coming back to the vision, I see vision as leverage. It's the leverage that will move you forward in terms of the vision that you have. If the vision is strong enough for the future and you keep focused on that vision, it's the leverage to move you forward through all the obstacles. And that's my take on it.
Thank you very much. Glenn M.
I think that when we talk about focus, we also need to be mindful of the lack of focus, which is the result of distractions. And in today's world, we kind of in a sea of distractions. So if we don't have a clear puzzle box lid or vision picture, it's easy for us to shift our focus onto the task at hand. And the task at hand might not be as exciting as the bigger picture that we're going to. And as a consequence, we then are easily distracted by someone else's big picture. So it's really important for us to, on a daily basis and often during a day, to just look at that puzzle box lid of yours. In other words, your vision, morning, noon, and night. Visualize where you're going, remind yourself why you're doing it so that other people's good ideas don't steal your dream.
Thank you very much. Quentin's last word, gotta dust the lens again. I think as an exercise for focus, I'm going to throw this out to our online audience. Focus is to get to something. So maybe the focus for all the people out there in the audience, we are looking for panelists for next week on this talk. Your focus could be to be on the panel. Get yourself focused so that you can be on the panel. That would be your challenge. Things will fall in place. If that is your focus, to say, next week, Wednesday night, I will be here on the panel to assist and be part of the panel. A lot of things will happen for you in this week because you will be focused. So maybe that's a challenge to you all out there. Hope to see some of you on board next week. Have an awesome evening. Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you very much, Glenn. And thank you so much for the audience for your participation. See you all next time. Same place, same time.
Muy buenos días a todos. I am Miguel Sanz from Madrid, Spain. I started using Map for Life back in 2016, where this picture here, where I am with Glenn, belong to that year in the training I did in Pretoria. And you know, there are many talks, many talks out there in internet, in real life, where great speakers tells you that you are unique, that you need to find your purpose, what you need to do in life. You end up out of those talks really happy, but naked, because you have no tools. What's Map for Life? Map for Life gives you the tools to achieve your goals, to be precise, to do all the things you need to do to achieve them. You are unique. Be mapped.